Hey guys, welcome back. I've had so many emails of people telling me they're struggling with VR and how it's the worst thing ever, but I did have some unique tips and stuff like that that you haven't seen anywhere else, so I thought I'd share them in this video. But before we begin, I did want to let you know that I have so many other videos on abstract reasoning, quantitative reasoning, all things Ucat, as well as free cheat sheets, so if that's something you're interested in, I'll leave the links down below. Other than that, I make loads of other videos on how to get into dental school, as well as life as a dental student because I'm now a 4th year, and productivity tips. So if those are things that you're interested in, make sure you subscribe down below so you don't miss out on another video, and let's get into it. So improving your speed reading is one of the most important things you can do with VR. It's all about timing and finding the relevant info quickly. So one of the things I recommend you do is trying out this speed reader test. So what it is basically a chunk of text, and it tracks how quickly you're reading it, as well as how many words per minute it is, and it also gives you some comprehension questions afterwards, which basically tests how well you did skim read that text. I think it's really important because it gives you a very good gauge of whereabouts you are with your speed reading, if you've improved or if you're not improving. All of that stuff is really important. And when you've applied all of these tactics, we can hopefully see an improvement in your speed reading, and this will give a gauge of whether it's actually working for you as a strategy or not. And something else that I think is really helpful is trying out this app Spreader. It basically helps you speed read and improve your speed reading and get faster in all of this stuff, and hopefully this will help you in your VR as well, because all about reading faster gives you more time to answer questions and stuff like that. So I'll be going into some specific VR tactics in a second, but I do want to say that there is a lot of resistance against reading fast and learning how to read fast, and it's not something that we're used to, but you really have to push against that to learn how to read faster, because it will help you so much and it will take you so far in the VR. So the first thing I learnt when I took the Kaplan course is reading in a zigzag. So I'll show you an example here, but it basically shows you that you read and you intake a lot more of the information in one glance over the passage. The second thing that they taught us is when you're reading and looking at a word, you should be able to use your peripheral eyesight to see the words on either side of the word. So you shouldn't actually be looking at all of the words, because your peripheral eyesight should be able to pick that up. Another thing is that because of this peripheral eyesight, when you're doing the zigzag, you shouldn't always move your eye all the way to the end of the passage. So all the way at the end of the sentences, on the edges of the passage, you shouldn't really be moving your eyes to those areas, because your peripheral eyesight should be able to pick those things up. And this is something obviously you have to train your eyes to do. Like, you're not used to it, you're used to reading it in full, taking your time and stuff like that, but you don't have the time and you don't have that luxury in the VR. So these are some things that I definitely think that you should spend some time training on. Another thing that I've heard that really helps a lot of people is focusing on the bigger words in the passage. So I'll show you an example here, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to be focusing on the words like he, she, and stuff like that, because focusing on the bigger words will hopefully allow you to find the relevant information quicker. So another thing that I know that a lot of successful people did is that they got loads of things like newspaper articles, journals, scientific journals, as well as things like history books, which is a really good one, and people just like got these passages of text that were 200 to 300 words long, and they would practice speed reading it. And then afterwards what they would do is they would test themselves and see how much they remembered from that passage when they sped read it, because it's not just speed reading, it's, you know, how much did you actually take from that, and if you were looking for specific information, did you find that information quickly, all of that stuff. So there are two ways to find the relevant info quickly. The first way is looking at the question and then looking for a keyword and then finding that in the passage, all of that stuff. And the second way is reading the passage fast and then answering the questions like that. Now, I would only recommend doing the second way if you're really fast at speed reading. Now, the thing is, obviously I want you to try both of these tactics. Take some tests and then see which ones reliably are scoring you higher, but I do recommend that the keyword tactic is a lot easier and faster for majority of people, but for some people also, you know, reading the passage fast might be helpful. So the first tip I have for you is, if you look at the introduction and the conclusion of the paragraph, it will really give you a good idea of what that paragraph is about. And this is really important, especially for the free text kind of questions, because they're asking you about a concept or something like that. Also, another thing to keep in mind is when you're reading the question, keep in mind what kind of things you're looking for. Are you looking for a date, a place? Are you talking about an argument or something like that? And also, when you're choosing your keyword, it's really important to choose easily recognizable things. So anything with a capital letter, anything like dates, places, numbers, or percentages, or stuff like that. So another thing is, when you do find your keyword in the passage, make sure you read the sentence before and after that keyword, because that will give you some context. And also, it's really important to look for extreme language in this situation. So sometimes they'll have words like always, or almost always. And so this is very important. Things like negative words, things like least, most, all of that stuff you have to be aware of. And so for those words you really need to be careful because they can really trip you up. And also when you have keywords, they might appear multiple times in the passage, so make sure, because sometimes, for example, if the keyword appears later on, the context might actually contradict what it says above, so you got to be careful of those things. And also, as there are multiple keywords in the question, there might also be synonyms in the passage, so make sure you're aware of the similar words and stuff like that, and you're also scanning for those. And there are specific words that they do try and use to trip you up, but don't worry, I've not forgotten about that. We'll just be covering that later on in the video. So you already know about the different types of questions that you can get in the VR section, and I won't bore you with this, but a quick recap is there are true, false and can't tell questions, as well as free text questions, which look something like this. And basically there is a statement which has corresponding answers and you have to choose from the multiple choice. So obviously you know that the true, false and can't tell questions are the easier ones to go for, and you want to prioritize these ones. But don't go around doing the true, false, can't tell questions and skipping around for those questions, because that's not a good tactic. What's going to happen is you're going to go through all those questions and then you'll start again doing the other questions, and you will have maybe 15 minutes left and you won't know how many questions you have left, and it's a mess because you won't know how many questions you've done, how many questions you haven't done, and this is just a mess. So what I would recommend is going through the questions one by one and then doing the questions as they are. And basically if you find a question that's really hard, especially if it's a free text statement, then I would flag guess and move on, because those questions aren't worth the time, they are more complex, they're going to take you longer, and you'd rather spend that time doing the easier questions which might be coming on later on. Now also you want to recognize that these easy hard questions are going to split up all over the exam, so what you want to do is you want to make sure that you don't waste all your time at the start of the exam and then have 15 questions left and 1 minute to do it. So what you want to do is you want to pace yourself, make sure that time is really important. You want to go through the exam, and because for example, there might be some true, false, can't tell questions right at the end, and you might miss that if you are not good with your timing. Obviously, also make sure that you know what true, false, and can't tell means. True means that there is direct evidence of it in the passage. False means that there is something in the passage that contradicts it, and can't tell means that even if there's something that doesn't align with it and you're not sure, it's unconclusive, then that's can't tell. And in these types of questions, you really need to be aware of the extreme language, and here is an example of that where it uses always. And when you're answering author questions, it might be really helpful to look at the conclusion first to see if there's an opinion there, but also remember that these author questions take the longest, so maybe it's worth skipping if you can't spot it immediately. So what UK CAT score do you want to be aiming for? Here are some of the average UK CAT scores over the last few years that you want to be aware of, and obviously you know that VR is one of the hardest subtests and people always perform pretty low on this subtest. But something I'm hearing over and over and over again in my emails is when you're doing questions and you keep getting a low score on something, ask yourself why. Go back to the questions that you got wrong, figure out, is it timing, is it the type of questions, are you not flagging, all of that stuff. You have to figure out exactly why. Are you spending too long on this question? Why were you spending too long on that question and stuff like that? Did you trip up somewhere? Why did you trip up? And was it specific wording and stuff like that? You really have to figure out why, target, like fix that, like do some theory or whatever you need to do, and then go back to questions. Obviously I think that you should spend most of your time doing questions, but it's really important to target those areas that you're weak at, otherwise you're never going to get better. You're just doing blind practice. And remember that not everyone always does every single question in the exam. Even the top decile people know that they have to guess and flag some questions so that they can have extra time on the other questions. Just be really diligent about your timing and your pacing. So you already know that there are 200 to 300 words per passage, there are 11 passages and 21 minutes. And in total there are 44 questions, which gives you 30 minutes per question or 2 minutes per passage. Time is tight, so the faster you can read, the more time you have for the questions. And I always say that pacing is so important, so you want to make sure that, for example, when your 10 minutes have gone, you have done like around 20, minimum of 20 questions. And another thing is, a lot of people fall into this trap where once they've found the answer for something, they really want to recheck in the paragraph and make sure that it's true and that there's nothing else contradicting. And I know I talked about before how you have to watch out for the synonyms and repeating keywords and stuff like that, but you really want to make sure that you're not spending way too much time and faffing around on this one question when you need to be moving on and spending time on the other questions. Another thing is, you really have to train yourself to figure out which of the passages are way more complex, which ones are going to take more time. You can't say they all look the same because you're not going to be able to flag effectively, and that's really important because you don't want to be wasting all of your time on these questions when you could be spending them on the easier questions. And one of the tips I really don't want you to overlook is make sure that you're taking care of your sleep, you're hydrated, you're eating well and stuff like that, that you have your mental clarity. You have to have your mindset on, because VR is very much about focus. You need all of your concentration for this, so make sure that you're well rested and you're good for the exam. So I'm going to be coming out with a video all about the best resources, free and paid, including like a comparison of the amount of questions they have, the price, all of that stuff. But remember that doing your foundation and your theory is only the starting of your practice. You want to be spending the most of your time doing practice questions which are timed, and that's why I will always talk about question banks, especially the ones that are online, because they are in a better format, especially for VR, because you need to have it online. You can't be doing it in a book because it just doesn't give you the same experience. And so obviously Medify is the one I recommend first because it literally has the biggest bank of questions there is. There's 20,000 questions, including so many theory lessons and stuff like that, and it's so helpful, and I cannot talk about it enough. And a lot of people say that it is very similar to the exam, and I would say so myself as well. Also, MedicMind have a really good resources. They also have like 250 questions which are for free, which is really amazing, and I think you should check them out as well. Well, that's all from me. I hope that was really helpful. Remember that with verbal reasoning, it's all about timing, pacing, learning how to speed read and stuff like that, and I hope these tactics were really helpful. If you like this, I also have loads of other videos on every other subtest that there is, as well as free cheat sheets linked in the description down below. And if you're into other content like how to get into dental school, day in the life of a dental student, and productivity tips, make sure you subscribe so you never miss another video, and I'll see you later. Bye!